The singing started on a Tuesday night in October, drifting through Nico Castellanos' cramped studio apartment like sea foam on the wind. At first he thought it was Mrs. Rodriguez from 3 Bishi, sometimes hummed old boleros while doing late night dishes, but this was different. The melody seemed to flow through the walls themselves, haunting and liquid. Like whale song mixed with wind chimes, Nico paused his marine biology textbook, listening. The sound grew stronger near his tiny bathroom, which made sense if it was coming through the pipes from upstairs. He pressed his ear to the wall, trying to place the tune. It wasn't any language he recognized, yet somehow it felt familiar, like a lullaby from a dream he couldn't quite remember. Probably just acoustics, he muttered, returning to his chapter on deep-sea bioluminescence. But concentration proved impossible. The melody wove through his thoughts, pulling at something deep. In his chest, he'd always been sensitive to sound its, why he'd switched from engineering to marine biology after spending a summer listening to whale songs off the California coast. By midnight, the singing had grown so beautiful and strange that Nico found himself standing in his bathroom staring at the shower. The melody definitely seemed strongest here, but Mrs. Rodriguez's apartment was on the opposite side of the building. Could sound travel through the water pipes that way. He turned on the shower, and the singing stopped immediately. The sudden silence felt like a held breath. Nico waited, water running uselessly down the drain, until gradually the melody returned fainter, now more cautious. "Hello?"
Oh?
He called softly, feeling ridiculous. "Is someone there?" The singing stopped again. This time the silence stretched longer. Just as Nico was about to give up and go to bed, a new sound emerged, not singing, but something like sonar clicks mixed with whispered words in that same unknown language, his heart hammering. Nico knelt beside the shower drain. The sounds were definitely coming from below, through the pipes themselves. He grabbed a drinking glass from the kitchen and pressed it against the bathroom floor, using it like a stethoscope the way his grandfather had taught him to listen for. Fish through boat holes. The melody returned, clearer now. It was impossible, but the song seemed to be coming from inside the building's water system itself. Not from another apartment, not from outside, but from the pipes, the water. The very infrastructure of the old converted warehouse he called home. Nico spent the rest of the night mapping the sounds. The melody was strongest in the basement laundry room, where the main water line entered the building. Armed with a flashlight and his acoustic equipment from school, he crept downstairs at 3 a.m. The singing stopped the moment he entered the basement. But now he could see something that made his breath catch, faint, bioluminescent patterns swirling through the pipes. Visible through the old glass sections that hadn't been updated since the building's industrial days. "I know you're there," he whispered to the glowing water. "I'm not going to hurt you. I'm a marine biology student. I study ocean life. I just want to understand." For a long moment, nothing happened. Then slowly a shape began to form in the main pipe junction, humanoid but flowing. It's like someone made of living water and starlight. The being's voice came through the pipes like music made of waves. "You can hear us truly, not just our warning sounds. This is ... unexpected." Nico's scientific mind reeled, even as his heart raced. "You're not from Earth." "No," came the liquid reply. "I am Vera Thalassa, researcher of emotional resonances. I have been studying your species through your water systems, learning how you connect through sound and feeling. But you are the first human to hear our communication as music rather than noise. There are others like you. Many, we are scattered through your water networks, observing, learning. But we were never meant to make contact." The bioluminescent form in the pipes seemed to pulse with uncertainty. "Your hearing us was not part of the plan." Nico pressed his palm against the cool glass of the pipe, watching the alien researchers form ripple-like reflection on water. "What happens now?" Vera said, her voice carrying notes of both fear and wonder. "Everything changes." Vera's form shimmered through the pipe system like liquid starlight, and Nico found himself mesmerized by the patterns of light that danced across her translucent skin. She was beautiful in a way that defied earthly comparison, part water nymph, part living constellation, entirely otherworldly. Your people, Nico whispered, still kneeling by the pipes. How long have you been here? I have been in this city's water system for 8 months, Vera replied, her voice creating harmonics that made the old pipes sing. Others have been on your world much longer. We came to understand something your scientists are only beginning. To discover that music and emotion are connected at a quantum level, your species uses sound to bond in ways that fascinate us. Nico's mind raced with questions, but one rose above the others. Can you... Can you leave the pipes? A form I can actually see properly. The luminescent patterns in the water swirled faster. It is possible, but risky. If your building's other residents see me... The rooftop, Nico said quickly. There's an old water tank up there that nobody uses anymore, connected to the same system, but private. 20 minutes later, Nico stood on the fog-shrouded roof, watching in amazement as the abandoned water tank began to glow. Vera emerged slowly, her form solidifying as she drew moisture from the air around them. She was taller than he'd expected, skin that shifted between translucent blue-green and silver, and hair that moved like seaweed in an invisible current. This is who I truly am, she said, her voice now carrying the sound of distant waves. On my world, we are beings of both water and music. We communicate through sonic frequencies that create emotional resonances in the water itself. Your world, what's it like?
Ow.
Vera's eyes, which held depths like ocean trenches, grew distant. Imagine cities that float in vast seas, connected. Not by roads, but by song streams that carry both transport and communication. Our entire civilization is built on harmonic frequencies. When we discovered that water carries emotional information, we became fascinated by worlds like yours, where life depends on the same substance. She moved closer, and Nico caught the scent of rain and ozone. But you, Nico Castellanos, here are true songs, not just the mechanical frequencies. In 8 months of study, you are the first human to perceive our communication as music rather than noise. What does that mean? It means you have a gift that bridges our species. Most humans hear our transmissions as pipe settling or strange echoes. You hear them as the emotional expressions they truly are. Vera reached out, her fingers leaving trails of luminescence in the air. May I show you how we truly communicate? Nico nodded, and Vera gestured toward the old water tank. Trust me, and step in with me. I can create a breathing environment. Within the water, you will not drown. His scientific curiosity overcoming his fear, Nico followed Vera into the tank. The moment he submerged, the water around him became breathable, filled with tiny bubbles of perfect air. But more than that, the water itself began to sing. Vera's voice surrounded him in 3 dimensions, carrying melodies that conveyed not just words but pure emotion. She showed him glimpses of her world-vast coral cities that grew in response to their inhabitants' songs, creatures that communicated through color and harmony, civilization where art and science were indistinguishable. We came here to study human emotional bonds, she spoke, but I find myself forming one instead. This was not planned, not prepared for in our research protocols. What'll happen when your people find out? Vera's luminescence dimmed slightly. That depends on what we discover together. Some of my people believe emotional connections between species are impossible, that we are too different. It's too alien to each other. Others think such connections might be the key to understanding consciousness itself. They floated together in the singing water, 2 beings from different worlds, learning that some bridges could only be built with trust. But as dawn approached, and Vera began to fade back into the water system, she left Nico with a warning that chilled him despite the warm air. There are others watching, Nico. Your government has begun to detect our transmissions. They believe we are enemy communications, not alien research. We may not have long before our secret becomes impossible to keep. As Vera dissolved back into the pipes, Nico realized that falling for someone from another world was about to become the least of his problems. Dr. Marcus Webb adjusted his headphones and frowned at the acoustic signatures spreading across his monitors. For 3 weeks? The Naval Hydroacoustic Analysis Center had been tracking unusual sonic patterns throughout the Pacific Northwest, coastal cities, and what he was seeing defied every conventional explanation. "Patterson, come look at this," he called to his colleague. The submarine communications they'd initially suspected would show regular mechanical patterns and IMEI codes, had signatures as distinct as fingerprints. But these signals were different. They flowed like music, with harmonic complexities that seemed almost ... emotional. Lieutenant Patterson leaned over Webb's shoulder, studying the cascading waveforms. "Still think it's the Russians? I don't know what to think anymore." Pulled up a comparison chart showing 3 months of data. Look at this progression. The signals started simple, almost mechanical. But over time, they've become more complex, more ... artistic. It's like we're watching a language evolve in real time. What troubled Webb most was the distribution pattern. Signals weren't coming from the ocean, as submarine communications should, but from within the cities themselves, specifically from water treatment facilities, old industrial buildings, and anywhere large capacity pipes intersected with natural water sources. "Sir," Patterson said carefully, "what if these aren't enemy communications at all? What if there's something else entirely?" Webb had been thinking the same thing, but protocol demanded they investigate all possibilities of foreign interference. First, he'd already authorized surveillance teams to monitor key sites, including the old warehouse district where some of the strongest signals originated. His secure phone buzzed. "Dr. Webb, this is Agent Torres with Coastal Security. We've got eyes on your target building in the warehouse district. There's a civilian who's been accessing the roof repeatedly at night, young man. It appears to be conducting some kind of experiments. With the old water tank up there." Webb's pulse quickened. "What kind of experiments?" "Unknown, but he's using acoustic equipment. Could be he's attempting to communicate with whoever's sending these signals." "A civilian name?" "Nico Castellanos. Marine biology student at the university. No red flags in his background, but his academic focus is on whale song and underwater acoustics."
Ow.
Webb felt pieces clicking into place. A student studying marine acoustic communication, accessing a water tank where their mysterious signals were strongest. Either this Castellanos was an incredibly sophisticated foreign agent, or Agent Torres. "I want round-the-clock surveillance, but at a distance. Do not apprehend or approach, and want a complete technical analysis of that building's water systems." That evening, Webb sat in an unmarked van across from Nico's building, watching through night vision scopes as the young man climbed to the roof carrying what appeared to be recording equipment. What happened next made Webb question his sanity. The abandoned water tank began to glow with a soft, blue-green light that pulsed in rhythm with the acoustic signals they'd been tracking. Through his equipment, Webb could hear the sounds clearly now, mechanical codes, but something that sounded almost like singing, like whale song, but infinitely more complex. "Are you recording this?" he whispered to his partner. "Every second, but Webb, look at the water itself." Through their scopes, they could see that the water in the tank was moving in patterns that defied physics, spiraling upward in impossible helixes, forming shapes that looked almost like ... double quotes. "Is that a person?" his partner breathed. Webb's training warred with his instincts. Every protocol said this was enemy activity requiring immediate intervention. But what he was witnessing looked less like warfare and more like a meeting between old friends. The way the young man moved toward the glowing water, the gentle nature of the interaction, this wasn't espionage. "This was contact, sir. Should we move in?" Webb watched as Nico stepped into the water tank and seemingly began breathing underwater. While carrying on what appeared to be a conversation with a being made of living light, his 40 years of military service had prepared him for many scenarios, but not for this. "No," he said quietly, "not yet, but triple the surveillance and get me a direct line to the Pentagon. I think we're dealing with something way above our pay grade." As Webb continued to watch, a terrible realization crept over him. The signals they'd been tracking weren't communications between foreign agents. They were communications between worlds. And if he was right, then Nico Castellanos wasn't just witnessing first contact, he was participating in it. The question now was whether Webb would treat this as the greatest security threat in human history or the greatest opportunity. Either way, the young man on that rooftop had no idea that his secret was already compromised. And somewhere in the singing water, neither did his alien friend. Captain Reef Morrow materialized in the old water tank with the force of a tidal wave, his presence immediately filling the space with pressure that made Nico's ears pop. Unlike Vera's gentle luminescence, Reef radiated authority. His form was more solid, more imposing, with skin that shifted between deep ocean blue and storm cloud gray. Fira Thalassa, his voice boomed through the water with the power of a whale's call. You have violated every protocol of the research mission. Vera's glow dimmed as she positioned herself protectively between Reef and Nico. Captain, I can explain. There is nothing to explain. Your emotional compromise with this human has been detected by our monitoring systems. Worse, your communications have been intercepted by the local military forces. Reef's eyes, dark as ocean trenches, fixed on Nico with barely concealed disgust. Did you truly believe your primitive security measures could hide such blatant protocol violations? Nico found his voice, despite the otherworldly pressure surrounding them. She hasn't violated anything. She's been learning about us, about how we connect. Silence. Reef's attention snapped back to Nico, and the water around them suddenly became thick and hard to breathe. You understand nothing of what you have. Disrupted human. This research mission has taken decades to establish. 7 of our people have spent years integrating into your water systems, gathering crucial data about emotional resonance and species compatibility. 7. Nico gasped. There are 7 of you? Or 7, Reef corrected grimly. 3 have already been compromised by your military's investigation. They had to dissolve their forms and return to base camp in the deep Atlantic. The others are preparing for emergency extraction. Vera's form flickered with distress. What Nico and I have discovered is exactly what the mission was designed to find. True emotional resonance between species. It's not just possible, it's profound. The connections we can form are precisely why emotional attachment was forbidden. Reef cut her off. You have lost objectivity, Vera. You can no longer distinguish between research and personal desire. This ... relationship ... has compromised not only your mission, but potentially exposed our entire species to a hostile first contact scenario. The water around them began to swirl faster, and Nico realized that Reef was preparing to take Vera away. Wait, he said desperately. You're wrong about humans being hostile. Yes, the military's investigating, but that's because they don't understand what you are. If we could... What? Reef's form expanded, becoming more imposing. Reveal ourselves to a species that destroys its own planet, that wages constant wars over resources and territory? Your people have already detected our communications and responded with surveillance and military investigation. This is exactly the hostility we predicted. That's not hostility. That's fear of the unknown, Nico argued. Humans always react with caution to new phenomena. But once we understand, once we know you're peaceful researchers, your understanding is irrelevant, Reef declared. The Deep Council has already made their decision based on this contaminated data. All research personnel are to return immediately. Any connections formed with human subjects are to be severed permanently. Vera's luminescence flared with desperate intensity. Captain, please, give me more time. Let me prove that these connections are valuable data, not contamination. Nico and I have shared could revolutionize how both our species understand consciousness and emotion. Reef paused, and for a moment his stern expression wavered. Vera, you were one of our most promising researchers. Your work on emotional quantum entanglement was groundbreaking. But look at yourself now, you glow brighter when this human is. Your sonic patterns have shifted to match his emotional resonances. You have become what you were sent to study, rather than maintaining the objectivity to study it. Maybe that's exactly what we needed to learn, Vera said softly. Maybe true understanding requires true connection. The Deep Council disagrees. Our species has survived by maintaining careful boundaries, by observing rather than interfering. What you call connection, they call contamination. Reef's form began to solidify further, becoming less translucent. You have until the next deep tide 3 of your Earth days to conclude your research and prepare for extraction. The deep ship rises then, and all personnel return home. And if I refuse? Reef's expression hardened completely. Then you remain here, permanently severed from our people, our technology, our civilization. You become as isolated as any human, with no way to return to the deep worlds. The water around them suddenly felt cold despite its warmth. Nico watched Vera's glow dim to almost nothing as she processed the ultimatum. 3 days, Reef repeated, then began to dissolve back into the water system. Do not let personal attachment blind you to the consequences, Vera. Some bridges once burned can never be rebuilt. As Reef disappeared, leaving only ripples in his wake, Vera turned to Nico with tears that sparkled like tiny stars. I'm so sorry, she whispered. I never meant for it to happen this way. But as Nico held her glowing form in the singing water, he realized their impossible love story had just become a race against time and, possibly against first contact itself. The plan was impossible, dangerous, and absolutely necessary. As Nico paced his apartment the next morning, still feeling the echo of Reef's overwhelming presence, couldn't shake Vera's final words from the night before. If we can prove that, connection enhances understanding rather than compromising it. Maybe the Deep Council will listen. 2 days? They had 2 days before Vera's people arrived to take her away forever. And 2 days to somehow convince both species that their bond represented hope rather than contamination. The water system, Nico muttered to himself, studying city infrastructure maps he'd pulled from the university library. If they communicate through the pipes, then the whole city is essentially one giant instrument. His phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. We need to talk. Government researcher. Not hostile. Meet me at Pier 47 in 1 hour. Come alone. Dr. Webb. Nico's blood chilled. The surveillance Vera had warned about had finally made contact. But as he stared at the message, a crazy idea began to form. What if the government researcher wasn't an enemy, but another piece of the puzzle? An hour later, Nico stood on the fog-shrouded pier facing Dr. Marcus Webb, a weathered man in his 50s whose tired eyes held more curiosity than hostility. You've been in contact with them, Webb said without preamble, the beings sending the sonic signals. I've been tracking your meetings for a week. Are you here to arrest me? Webb was quiet for a long moment, watching seagulls wheel over the gray water. That depends on what you tell me. Son, I've been analyzing submarine communications for 30 years. What I've been hearing from your building isn't any kind of warfare or espionage I've ever encountered. It's complex, almost like music. It is music, Nico said, making a desperate gamble on Webb's apparent openness. They're not enemies, Dr. Webb. They're researchers, like you. They came here to study how humans form emotional connections. And one of them, one of them formed a connection of her own. Webb's expression shifted from suspicion to fascination. Her own? You're talking about actual alien contact, aren't you? Not just signals, but communication with an intelligence. More than communication. Understanding, connection. Nico pulled out his phone, showing Webb recordings of Vera's songs. But her people think emotional attachment compromises research objectivity. They're coming to take her home in less than 2 days, and if they do, humanity loses its chance at peaceful first contact. Webb listened to the recordings, his expression growing more amazed with each haunting melody. These harmonics, they're unlike anything in our acoustic databases. You say she's been living in the city's water system for months, along with others in cities around the world. They've been studying us through something they call emotional resonance, the way we use music and sound to bond with each other. And now they're forming bonds themselves, Webb said thoughtfully, which their leadership sees as a problem. Exactly. Nico felt a spark of hope. But what if we could show both our species that these connections are valuable? That understanding requires empathy, not just observation. Webb was quiet for several minutes, and Nico could almost see the wheels turning in the older man's mind. Finally, Webb spoke. What do you need from me? Access to the city's emergency broadcast system, and a way to connect it to the water distribution network. You want to turn the entire city into a communication device, I want to create a harmony between human and alien music that both our peoples can hear simultaneously. Something that proves connection, enhances understanding, rather than compromising it. Webb studied Nico's face, seeing the determination there. This is the biggest risk of my career. If I'm wrong about you, if this goes badly, if we do nothing, she leaves forever, and humanity remains alone in the universe, Nico said simply. If we try and fail, at least we tried. That evening, as the sun set over the city, Nico stood once again in the old water tank with Vera. While Dr. Webb monitored from a mobile command center he'd discreetly positioned nearby. The plan was elegant in its simplicity. They would create a sonic resonance, flowed through both the city's water system and its emergency broadcast network, allowing humans and aliens to hear the same harmony simultaneously. Are you certain this will work? Vera asked, her form already glowing brighter at the prospect of hope. I'm certain we have to try, Nico replied, taking her luminescent hand in his. As they began to sing together, Nico's voice carrying human emotion, Vera's carrying alien harmony, something magical happened. The water around them began to pulse with light that spread through the pipes beneath the city. Webb's equipment picked up the resonance and amplified it through emergency frequencies, carrying their combined song to every radio, every television, every connected device in the metropolitan area. But more than that, other voices began to join them. From water systems across the city, Vera's fellow researchers added their own harmonies, creating a symphony that bridged worlds. And from the city itself, humans began to respond, some humming along with the broadcast, others adding their own musical voices from rooftops and windows. The song that rose over the city that night was unlike anything either species had ever experienced. It was connection made audible, understanding made musical, two worlds finding harmony together. When Captain Reef arrived with the deep ship, the next evening he found not a compromised researcher requiring extraction, but a new form of first contact that neither species had anticipated. The harmony still echoed through the city's water systems. And for the first time in his long life, Reef understood what his researchers had truly discovered. Some bridges weren't built with technology or treaties, but with trust, understanding, and songs that could make two worlds sing as one. As Nico and Vera stood together in the singing water, watching alien and human representatives begin their first official communications, they realized their love story had become something Gratara, harmony that would echo between stars for generations to come.